6:38 p.m. as well.
Okay. I don't see anyone that is here to make public comment. Okay, so first up is to approve the SY 25-26 Superintendent Evaluation Tool. So, perfect. This is what it looks like when you print it out. It's not exactly the same when you are logged into it. We will all get logins. It is, like we talked about before, it is held on the Perform platform, which is part of PowerSchool, so it gets attached to a employee's personnel file, and it is the same way all of the other teaching staff is being evaluated in the same format. The difference between this time and the last time we looked at it, we took the feedback of wanting the narratives. Can you scroll down a little bit, Seth? And does it do it? Does it not do it when you print it up? Scroll, please. Scroll. Okay, hold on. I'm going to show you what it looks like when you log on. Because though all of those meet, exceed, significant progress, some progress, and do not meet, have definitions underneath them. Which is what we talked about last time. But I need 1 second to get in there. Yes, I will need the HDMI in 1 second.
No, I just printed out what was on the
Okay. Maybe. Okay. So it's just going to take a second. Hopefully it all works fine. Ta-da. Okay. There are a couple of other things to know. So I took the information from this committee, and then the subcommittee met and took the feedback and incorporated, to the best of our ability, that with Jadira, who, having gone through this a few times working with her, I am happy to sit down with anyone at any point if they want to fiddle with the system so they can see it. So see when it is all, it's actually there. It just, I don't know why it didn't print. So this is the feedback we talked about. There's also on the side, which I think will be helpful to everyone, you can go up to where it says rubric, and this is the standard as set by DESE. This is the DESE information that is over here. If you have a larger screen, it will show up better, and they will not be one or a half a word per line. So if you look at it on a big screen, it is very easy to finagle and manage. Also, over here on this side, you can take notes and write in here in the text box. Which will be helpful.
Do the notes stay with it? Like if you were to type
Like
a
if
note
I
there,
wrote a note, does everybody see my note, or does the note get saved
is
in
it
my
your
own?
Your own personal use, or does it go to the person you're evaluating?
It is your own personal use.
Okay.
The notes.
The notes, yep, the note section on the side. So there will also be, in this tiny little thing that happens right here, there will be the superintendent's commentary about her note, about like goal tool, then she will write a synopsis, and then you will have your space to write down here. And then finally, through all the goals, the other piece we wanted to talk about, this is the standards. These are the same. anything that was up there before didn't get altered. It was just the additional information of breaking out what need, met, exceed, blah, 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 was requested. Okay, so then down here, we will have, will be all of the artifacts that are attached. We have already talked to Dr. Z about making sure that the way, because we can't attach a document to a specific goal or standard because the system doesn't allow for that to happen, the documents will be named in a way that shows what goal or standard they are in support of. I think those are all of the highlights from the last time. I'm sorry that it doesn't print exactly the way it shows up on here. Yep, Anna?
So one of the things, so this is fantastic, thank you. Let's start there. One of the things that I did notice, though, is that there's very little distinction between exceeds and meets. And there's a huge difference between meets and almost like between the
Significant progress.
signi-
Is
I
it,
think it's the other one.
Some progress.
I think it's maybe it's between significant progress and some progress, or I think it's the other category of goals. This is the goals and,
this is an example of goal 2. Did you want like goal
nope,
1?
I think the standards,
Just-
maybe the standards. They have different categories.
Yep. This one?
Yeah, between proficient and needs improvement. But I think also in the other one, I think there's like, there's bigger gaps between some categories than other categories. And the differences between the exceeds and meets or whatever in proficient and needs improvement, is a much larger gap than, or the
Like
ends
the gaps
are,
in between aren't the same?
the ends, the gaps at the ends are smaller than the gaps in the middle.
Okay.
And so if you're trying to decide whether they're proficient or need improvement, the two definitions are very far apart. And if you're trying to decide between proficient and exemplary, then they're much closer together. And so I'm just wondering if that was intentional, or if maybe they could be made to be more evenly distributed. I don't know. I don't know if that's important, but I just noticed that.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, Tim.
I think if we can get specific guidance on what changes to make, we could make changes, but what we discussed was that while we want to make this, the guidance language, more or less comprehensive and, apply the like mutually exclusive, comprehensively exhaustive principle to some extent, there's also in a pool of 14 people who are going to be submitting this evaluation, and also this is a committee, there's going to be room for discretion among the committee members about how they choose. So if there are specific tweaks we could identify tonight and decide on, then maybe we should do that. But I think what we aimed for was good enough. And I think if we were distributing this to 1,000 people, we might shoot for a little more airtightness between the measures. But I'm going to say, let's go for it.
Thanks, Tim. Laura Jane?
It looks to me like there's only one line that's different from the first to the second. Am I missing that? like from exemplary to proficient, it looks like modeling the process through the superintendent's own evaluation process and goals. That final sentence is the only difference between the two of them. I'm missing?
This is just the one that happens to be here on the screen right now. So are you,
That's sort of what I was alluding to.
Dr. Z?
Two things. This section is based on the DESE framework, so that's already established. The second part, in any rubric, especially when it comes to teacher or educator evaluation, proficient and exemplary are often differentiated between the step up, which is the step up is actually taking the practice and actually bringing your leadership or bringing your staff along. So that's why frequently, if you go down, you'll see that exemplary is all of proficient plus more, plus the fact that you've taken the time to teach, to work, to guide someone else in the same process that you are in.
So that's what the models part.
Correct.
Any further questions? Deb?
The buttons at the bottom, update, data transfer back, save progress, save and submit. I'm assuming that if you save progress, log out and return to it, your progress is saved.
Right.
Yes,
Submit is when you're done. Back is obvious. What is update, data transfer?
I believe,
So
yeah.
everyone,
have to make it up.
and I think it may be on yours, but I don't know if it's on everyone else. That allows that once you save and submit, you're able to send the data into the final cumulative form.
Tim?
I don't know what update data transfer does. I didn't mean to detract from your explanation. Sounds totally plausible to me. My hunch is actually that Sarah Bess has administrator privileges of some
Yes.
kind and sees a magic button that we will not see. As someone who's worked with data systems for a very long time, I encourage everyone to do your evaluation work outside of this system on like a stone tablet or something similarly durable, and then copy and paste it in here. Do not trust. You can try it. You can save progress. I'll try it. Do not assume that it will save your progress. That's professional feedback. 20 years, 30 years really, in IT.
One of the things that we see with our administrators, or even currently like myself, is I actually print the rubrics and I do a lot of paper copy and writing. I do that in my notebook, and what I've been seeing as I've walked through this process with my administrators is that's what's happening, and then translating it back into the system. Sometimes you put it into the system does not save. The system may go down. We had that instance with board docs where, one chair had the meeting saved and it wouldn't post, and one chair posted the meeting and then we couldn't get into board docs at all. So I second what Tim is saying, and I say that that's a practice that I have currently with my evaluations.
Okay, Deb?
I really appreciate the standardization of the rubric, incorporating the DESE part into it, because I think that's where progress over last year is evident, that we're all kind of looking at the same things, or at least the same verbal descriptions of the different levels. I would, the question for the attachments, if they're all at the end, how does one, do you use two windows? You have the attachments open and then how does that work?
Yep, so they open and then they can be on the side. So you can open as many as you want, and they're just, that's the only place to attach them in the file, like in the
Tool.
tool. Yes, sorry, thank you.
And
So
then,
it's just the location of them, as opposed to being able to, ideally what we wanted and even reached out to Perform and Power School to see if you were able to like attach them to the specific goal, but that was not an option for us. So that's why they're just at the bottom. That's why we talked about making sure they are named in a way that says like, this artifact supports goal 2, blah, 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 blah.
so follow-up would then be, last year, I got very lost in the details and had a hard time assimilating the information and figuring out how that mapped to each of each of the levels. So I appreciate that there's goals. Is there a way of breaking out the artifacts so that there's sort of, it's progressive the same way? That you can see, oh, this speaks to this level of, yeah.
The level that the artifacts speak to is going to be subjective to the viewer, to the evaluator. My job is to present the artifacts showing that I did the work. And in speaking to the team, the subcommittee, there were some suggestions around naming and even grouping and making sure things were in, like, document form, easily to identify. I think that if you look in terms of the goals and what's under there with meet progress, there's actual, like, at minimum, you see evidence of this. So at minimum, you see evidence of flyers, communication. It's my job to then compile all of those things and put them there.
So I think it's more like Dr. Z presents the artifacts, and then you, as the evaluator, decide to what level those artifacts rise to you.
And so now that this tool, we're about to vote on it, Dr. Z can start putting together artifacts as opposed to how we did it last year in June?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. This is excellent. It's not even May. We are 6 weeks way ahead of the curve, so thank you all for all this work.
Laura Jane?
You're welcome. No, I did nothing. I'm just kidding.
Did you have your hand up?
No, I was
No.
trying
Oh,
to be
okay.
funny. Yeah.
All right.
Anna.
Anna, yes.
So, if the artifacts are all attached at the end, does that mean you have to go through everything and then go back? Or can you go all the way to the end of the form without submitting anything? Okay.
Yeah, it's
Can I-
all in one scroll, so it's just, there's no pages, I have to go back, I have to figure it out. There's just like one big long form, it has all the information on it, you can just scroll to the bottom, open up whatever document you want to see, and then go back through.
Yep. Excellent. I was going to share my process, and that's what it is. I go all the way down to see if there's attachments. Sometimes I go in and I read what's on top, and they would say as attached, so I go down. It all depends on your learning and style.
Okay, excellent. I will move for the region to accept the 25-26 superintendent evaluation tool as presented.
Second.
Oh, we're all here. Lovely. All those in favor, please raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. No? Okay.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to force you.
I'm just getting ready for my part.
Okay. 8 in favor, 0 opposed, 0 abstain, and 1 absent. What? No? We're good? Okay.
I move the same for the Amherst School Committee.
Second.
Can we discuss really briefly? Which is, I would say as amended, because I'm finding typos in spelling, and as educators, we should spell correctly.
As amended. With minor
Yes.
edits.
As spell checked?
As spell checked.
Yes.
All in favor? Okay, passes 4-0-0, 1 absence.
Okie dokie. Thank you to everybody who worked on this. This was a lot of work, and especially huge shout out to Jadira because she put it all together and like fought with the form the whole time. So, yay, Jadira. Okay, thank you. Oh, I don't need to be. You. Oh boy.
Actually, if I could pass through here.
Oh, we have to.
Give you a little extra room.
Yeah. We all fall down.
Good. Thank you.
I have the distinct honor between myself and Dr. Guevara of introducing our new Mental health administrator. I know I'm not saying the whole title, but Colleen, so I'm going to hand it over to Dr. Guevara, and then we're going to sit through our presentation.
I just wanted to share our enthusiasm, and it took us a little bit, but we are really happy that Colleen has joined us. She's, aside from an incredible professional, as you will see, she has great energy, and she comes to work with such experience and a smile, and she's a joy to work with, and she's already engaged in all of our elementary schools. She's been attending mental health meetings. She's been working with us in the family center and everywhere, already dealing with stuff with self-harming, et cetera. So she's hit the ground running, and I just wanted to share how excited we are. So thank you so much.
Welcome.
Thank you. I'm not gonna lie, I have more energy in the morning, but the 7 p.m. is fine too. Thank you so much for giving me the time and for listening and just being here. I appreciate it. So I am, as Marta and Dr. Z said, you can hear me on this, right? Okay. I'm technically very loud anyway, so, okay, there we go.
You have to do it in order to get picked up.
Okay, there we go.
Yeah.
So I am Colleen Bogdanovich, and I'm the new administrator of mental health and behavioral services, I think is the technical title. I'm happy to meet you all, happy to be here tonight. You guys can't really see that though, or you can see it on the feed, right? So just to give you a little bit of information about me and my background, is primarily in behavioral health and systems level policy work. So over the last several years, I've led policy development and implementation initiatives across the country, both at the state and local levels. Worked at the intersection of data, community input, and regulatory and statutory alignment is kind of my expertise. And that lens is exactly what helped inform the BPIP update for 2026. So tonight I'm going to be presenting on that update to the BPIP, and then I'll walk you through everything. But how much time do I have? Not a lot of time, right?
No,
No? As much time
I
as
think
I
we're
need.
pretty interested in hearing what you have to
Okay.
say, so you be as in-depth as
As
you
long
would
as
like
I
to
can
be.
stay awake, basically, right? Okay. So I will be presenting on the April 2026 update to the district's bullying prevention and intervention plan. I'll walk you through all of that, including what the data showed, what changed, and then what the implementation plan looks like going forward.
Can I have a point of order?
Yeah.
I think we should introduce ourselves.
That would be excellent. So
Sure.
I'm not just talking into the abyss.
We can do that.
Yeah.
I'm
that would
Sarah
be good.
Bess.
Thank you.
I am chair, and I'm from Pelham.
I'm Deb Leonard. I'm chair of Amherst School Committee.
Nice to meet you.
I'm William Scher. I'm vice chair of the region and then also Pelham.
Nice to meet you.
Laura Jane Hunter, she, her pronouns, Amherst School Committee, Regional School Committee. That's it, right?
Yep.
Nice to meet you, Laura.
Hi, Andrew Hart, Amherst School Committee and Regional School Committee.
Nice to meet you, Andrew.
Nice to meet you.
Hi, welcome. Bridget Hines, she, her pronouns, and I am Amherst Vice Chair and a member at the region.
Nice to meet you, Bridget.
Anna Hurd, I'm from Shutesbury and on the region.
Nice to meet you, Anna.
Tim Shores, on the region from Leverett.
Nice to meet you, Tim. Thank you. That's very helpful. And I know Dr. Z.
My last name is Kenny.
I know the peanut gallery.
Everybody
very
else
well.
uses their last name too. My last name is Kenny.
Nice to meet you. Thank you for that. I appreciate that. So I am eager to continue to work with the community and staff just to ensure the best and safest outcomes for students, right? That's why we're all here. So I'm on slide 2, if you guys have slide 2. I'll try to move through this at a pace that leaves time for questions at the end. If something that comes up does raise a question, if you don't mind just holding it. And then hopefully as we go through, I'll answer the questions as we go through, because oftentimes that happens and, you know, you'd be like, oh, I'm gonna get to that, I promise. And if you want to, I will make sure that at the end we have time for questions.
Thank you.
Absolutely. So we can start first. I'm on slide 3 here. With the BRIM data for all schools, just as a helpful backdrop of what has happened from February 1st to March 31st. If you're from Amherst, you may have seen some of this, but this is for all schools last night. So these are the data for February 1st through March 31st. This is the most recent complete reporting period, and some of these are still open and pending investigation because that wasn't that long ago. So 36 reports were filed across the 7 schools, 5 confirmed bullying cases across those 36, and 72% of cases had no named investigator recorded, something that's worthy of pointing out. Because it informs the larger conversation that we're having here about implementation and practice guidance. So it's not necessarily a reflection of whether the investigations occurred in these 72% of these cases, but it's more of a documentation gap, right? So it's the same pattern that we'll see in the full year data that we'll get to in a couple slides from now, but the updated BPIP and the implementation plan that we'll talk about are specifically designed to close that gap. In addition to the quantitative data, so directly from BPIP, the numbers, an incredible amount of research and qualitative data, both from the team and myself, were collected throughout the update process. But when we're looking at everything all together, the same question kept surfacing as to why outcomes were still inconsistent across the different buildings, which I think is what everyone's kind of trying to figure out and the history of what we're looking at here. And there were 3 main processes that were conducted. One of them was a statutory review. The other was, another was the working group process, and then the alignment analysis. So each came at that question from a different direction, and we reached the same answer, was that the existing plan described what should happen, but it didn't specify the system to make it happen consistently across the districts. And that's really what this update is designed to fix. I did have a latte before this, so if I'm talking too fast, just give me one of these. I'm trying to stay awake for everybody. So some additional data that informs the update. I mentioned talking about all of 2025 here, and I know you've probably seen this, but more in the aggregate here. Across 2025, we had 187 reports district-wide and 46 total so far just in 2020. Districts, thank you. Multiple, all 3 districts. 46 total so far in 2026. That's all the way since January 1st, not just February 1st, and through March 31st. That indicates a positive, right, that the system is being used. Students and families are bringing concerns forward, and again, that's a positive that's worth highlighting here. Okay, so the BRIM system is working, people know how to access it, and we're seeing the evidence of those reports being brought forward. In the majority of those cases, the input field in BRIM for named investigator, again, was blank. Once again, that doesn't mean that no one investigated it. It just means that the documentation wasn't there. So even if in a school, a designee is always the same in that particular school, and that's their internal practice, they've codified that, they know this person is going to investigate all reports, they're spearheading it, they're doing it, they're just not entering that field into BRIM. From a data oversight and compliance perspective, that's difficult because we can't see that, right? So that's an implementation gap from our perspective. And a policy that doesn't produce consistent documentation can't produce consistent outcomes across the districts. This update, again, is designed to close that gap. We talked about the 3 ways that we used information to inform the update. The second one was the working group process. So we convened a working group across 2 sessions. The working group was comprised of students, family, staff, law enforcement, partners, and community and behavioral health providers as partners. They were all in attendance at both meetings. Those were held remotely. We broke into breakout groups, very successful meetings. We had some incredible feedback from everybody that was in attendance, and their feedback was very specific and consistent across all the groups. and it produced 5 key themes. And every single one of them is addressed in the BPIP draft update. And the themes are that trust and safety are barriers to reporting. There's inconsistency across buildings, which we know. Unclear process for families is an issue. There are equity gaps for vulnerable students. And then there's insufficient follow-up in terms of communication. I see some nodding, so I don't think any of this is a surprise, right? That everyone's kind of on the same page here across the community at large. But what I want to highlight is that the working group's lived experience feedback and our technical alignment pointed to the same underlying gaps, and that through completely different pathways, right? So one was very technical, statutory, reviewing the policy that you all have written, as well as a lot of research and reading and things, and then people, actual voices, right, from the community and folks that are doing the work as well, including staff. And that all pointed, that convergence provides confidence that we're addressing the appropriate things here. And here on the next slide, every revision in the draft is traceable, and traceable back to either a working group theme, a statutory alignment gap, or both. I've made that visible here in this table. Just you also have a handout that is a helpful resource, hopefully, to kind of just align things section by section. And just to see the logic behind each of those decisions, that they were either data-driven or research-driven or community-driven changes. Just to highlight a couple things here from section 7, the training and professional development section. The biggest substantive addition is the explicit SEL framework in our professional development. The old plan referenced skill building. The new plan embeds it in there with the CASEL 5 competencies and DESI guidance. That is now mandatory language throughout the plan. And that change responds directly to what the working group told us, which is that staff don't have a consistent framework in terms of prevention. And that we'll get to that in a few slides when we talk about the SEL alignment across the entire district that spans, into the 26-27 school year. And then in section 9, something to point out, we corrected a legal error in the investigation trigger. So the old language only required investigation when the principal had already substantiated that bullying had occurred, and that's actually backwards. So the new language requires investigation of all reports across the board. We want, if a report comes in, we need to investigate it, right away.
Yes.
So that's, yeah. So that now exists. On the next slide here, I do want to address the timeline question directly because I know it's been raised both in community feedback by this group, by across the board here. So Massachusetts law requires investigations to be conducted promptly. That word is intentional, not used vaguely. The legislature chose it because the timeline for a complex investigation involving students with either disabilities, multiple parties involved, or off-campus digital conduct is fundamentally different from a straightforward single incident case to be investigated. A hard deadline, even though if it's well-intentioned, which we know that it is, can actually end up forcing premature closure of an investigation, which subsequently creates the appearance of a resolution, but it doesn't actually end up in practice protecting students' safety, which can be problematic and, again, difficult to see, right? So what does create accountability from what we know from data and research and best practices is that the person that owns the case from day one, knowing that it's accountability. So our BRIM data shows that the majority of cases, again, 72% just in this last 2 months, no investigator was named in the record. We saw that earlier. And that's the accountability gap that we're talking about and that we're trying to address. We want to know who's in charge of a bullying report as soon as it happens. we can train that, and we can make sure that that box is being filled. It's filling in a box, right? The implementation plan addresses that directly so that we have a named assignment at intake, documented extensions when they are needed, family communication throughout the process, safety plans are in place right away. Whether bullying has been substantiated or not, a safety plan needs to be put in place. And then a 30-day follow-up requirement. These are also, just to, as an aside, things that can be placed into the BRIM system as very annoying automations that pop into people's inboxes, right? And then that, from an oversight and compliance perspective, makes it easier for us to ensure compliance. So, me personally, from my experience in the field, I'd rather give the committees for the districts real accountability metrics, who was assigned, when they acted, what the outcome was, whether the family was kept informed, rather than, you know, check a box that says the case was closed on day whatever, that doesn't have a person's name on it, because that's difficult for me to track as a data analyst and as somebody that's trying to oversee all of these reports, because right now I get them in my inbox and I don't see a name attached to it. So that creates triggers a chain of events where we have to call, figure out who owns this, and emails get unanswered. But if there's a name attached to it, it makes it a lot easier. So on the next slide, talking about the BPIP and the SEL work, I mentioned it a little bit earlier. One of the things I'm most committed to in my new role here is making sure that we're not creating parallel systems that don't talk to one another. In many of my roles, across many of my jobs, I annoy people to death with my talk about systems that talk to one another. But the BPIP and the district's SEL implementation work are designed as a unified system. Right? One thing, they're all very layered and into one another, and they should be. Because we're talking about behavior, we're talking about student safety, we're talking about all of those things. We're talking about what occurs inside of the building that you send your children to. The updated BPIP now requires that our professional development content be grounded in CASEL's 5 core domains. They're there up on the self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship skills, responsible decision-making. Those are embedded in the professional development content. And it's also embedded with shall language, not maybe you might language. And that means when we train staff on bullying prevention, the staff themselves are building the same skills that we're asking them to then teach and model to the students. So these practices and this behavior and this pattern of behavior is modeled within the schools from within. The SEL work plan is currently in its exploration phase, so very, very new in phase 1. But as findings come in, as we talk to people, as I assess the schools and embed myself into the schools myself, they'll directly inform how we implement this policy at the building level. But it doesn't affect how we're implementing the BPIP rollout, because that's statutorily required.
Social emotional learning.
Social emotional learning, I'm sorry, I should know better with the acronyms, because I'm always like, what does that acronym mean? I have to learn a whole new set of acronyms. So on the next slide here, just to talk about those phases again of the implementation plan for the bullying and prevention plan, is the adoption of the plan is the foundation here. It's not the finish line. It's the very beginning of, the beginning of the beginning of improvement here in quality, continuous quality improvement for CQI. That's another one of my favorite acronyms for the districts. What I want to walk you through now is what happens the moment this plan is adopted, and what the committees can expect to see from my office at each stage. So once the plan is adopted, we've got phase 1, which is the updated BPIP, goes on the website into staff handbooks, and the principals confirm their receipt of that. That's the statutory notice requirement for the bullying prevention plan. Phase 2 then is initiated. This is the most operationally significant phase. of all the phases. We train all the administrators and counselors on BRIM usage protocols. This includes correct status categories, whose name goes where, how it goes in there, what people should enter, and what they should look for so that they can then, model that and train. So if they're receiving a verbal report, they can enter it appropriately on their end. Intake assignment and behavior logging. The investigation checklist gets distributed and walked through with building principals. This is where the accountability gap in the data actually gets closed here. In phase 3, which statutorily needs to occur just before September to adhere to the biennial timeline, students and family handbooks are updated. A one-page reporting flow for each building is distributed internally and then made available on our website. Seth? And then annually, a written notice to families in prevalent languages goes out publicly, and it's made accessible for all types of learners and various language speakers. I already said that, prevalent languages. Phase 4, which will happen over the summer, the BPUP implementation integrated into next year's professional development calendar for all staff. The social emotional learning is alignment applied to prevention programming, and then the individual building SEL leads are identified. So each building will have an SEL lead that will communicate directly with my office, and they'll kind of, we want to empower the buildings to be able to take care of all this themselves. And then I want to note that the committee will receive an update at each phase milestone. So any of these reports I talked about, or checklists, or any documents will all, be approved internally and then come before the committees as well. And you won't have to ask for anything. We'll bring that to you. So just a note on consistent reporting on the next slide. Going forward, each of the 3 school committees will receive BRIM data presentations similar to what was given last night at the, I don't even, which one was that? Amherst, okay. It'll be in a consistent format for the representative schools, and then implementation progress updates at each phase milestone, and then an annual BPIP review. And then anything else that occurs in between then that's relevant will also be forthcoming at those meetings. Once we have detailed investigation checklists and BRIM usage protocols developed, internally approved, like I said, we'll bring them before the committees as well. In terms of next steps, tonight closes the public comment period. Written comments were accepted through May 1st, tomorrow, yeah. Oh, so it'll technically be open until tomorrow night, I guess, right? So any substantive feedback received will be reviewed and then incorporated as needed before the plan is formally adopted. And then again, this is not just a routine compliance exercise just because it needed a biennial update. It's a substantive improvement to a plan that was technically compliant, but structurally in need of alignment. It's grounded in what the community told us, in DESI guidance, in CASEL standards, to ensure that we're, in compliance and aligning with social emotional learning standards, and in what the BRIM data showed us about where implementation has broken down over the years. It is designed to be implemented with fidelity, sustained over time. I'm confident in it, and I would now be happy to take any questions if you have them. Yes, before I do.
So I think for a long time there's been some conversation around the investigative protocols and what we're doing. And I know earlier this year the push was let's get it into BRIM. But the lens that Colleen has walked in and showed us, even with the digging deeper into the gap files and who's the investigator and having the rich conversations with her around the development of the plan. And it has opened my eyes as superintendent to different ways of looking at data and engaging. I'm truly excited about this. We've also found possible individuals to build a dashboard so Colleen can go in and do that. She's already had deep conversations with BRIM around inputting some of the things that we need to have that adequate data in there. So as a district, I think we are moving in a very strong and right direction to address these things. And I hand it back over to you so that you can engage with her, and she's completely ready. I'm just here for emotional and superintendent support.
Okay,
Definitely.
questions, feedback? Sure. Anna?
So I actually have like a couple pages of things that I could send you later.
Yep, that would be
But,
helpful, yep.
I have a couple of sort of basic things. I see a lot of references to policy in your BPIP. And the BPIP is not policy. The BPIP is procedure. And the policy that needs to be referenced is JICFB, which is the actual policy around bullying. And then BPIP is the procedures for making sure that policy is implemented. And so I just wanted to clarify the slight distinction. In addition, there's a section in the BPIP that says all of the, it's like CMR language, CMR language that has bullying is prohibited in these places. We specifically took out that language when we did our policy. And so if you cite that, that is not our policy, that is the state's policy. And I think we would prefer that you cite our policy. The reason we took it out is, there's many reasons we took it out. And when I was on the Shutesbury School Committee, they pushed back really hard on that. But the reason that we took it out was because bullying is prohibited. It just is. We have jurisdiction in those places, and we can enforce it in those places, but it is prohibited. And we don't want to say, we don't want someone coming to us and say, well, I wasn't here, and so that doesn't apply to me. We want to be able to say, in this district, it's prohibited. And then we can, we can make procedures to say what happens if it's here, what happens if it's there, but the policy is we don't tolerate that here. I think that because of cyberbullying, it makes the distinction of on school grounds affecting school environment a little bit more gray, because a lot of the cyberbullying doesn't occur on school grounds. It occurs at home. It occurs between students, but it occurs at home and not on the school grounds. And so I think that removing that specific language about exactly where it has to occur may help with that. Again, that's from the policy committee. I think that's just sort of what our perspective on that one. In your slide, you said 30-day follow-up. It should be after 30, within 30 days. But if you're following up, it should be after a certain point, but maybe before another point. And so it's like, you don't want somebody to follow up the next day because that's within 30 days, because then you might miss the bullying that reoccurs 5 days later. And so if you're looking for seeing if the bullying is recurring, it has to be after a certain amount of time, but then before too long, before it becomes a problem. Does that make sense?
I think
Sorry.
so.
Okay.
Yeah, no.
It just says follow up within 30 days.
Within 30 days, yeah.
And maybe you do want to make sure that it is followed up with, again, in a month, before a month is up, but at the same time, it shouldn't be immediately.
Okay, so, let me just make sure I understand the question. Sorry, I'm still trying to unpack the first question that you said. That's okay. That's all right. My brain is working overtime right now. The second question that you're asking is, or the statement that you're making is that if bullying has been substantiated, and then once the case is the incident is closed and the determination has been made, you want somebody to follow up within 30 days, but you want like a timeline window instead, like between
20 and 30 days or something like that.
20 and
Because
30
like, I don't want it to be, like, within 30 days could be anywhere from 1 day to 30 days,
right.
right? And if it's 1 day, you might not know whether it's actually recurring
Yeah.
because it hasn't had enough time to recur yet. Or
I
the
think-
bully could be like, okay, I'll be good, and then, a week later be like, no.
Well, and I think that, I think we're kind of, what we're talking about is leaving that to the discretion of the designee, which would be a point, like an education and training note that we would make when we're rolling this out. So, and I think it's valid, and I'd love you to send me that, like, in your notes, because that's a point that I'd love to make while we're training it, is that the situation is going to dictate when you follow up, right? So, like, depending on what actually happened in this incident and how it was cleared up and what the safety plan looks like there's so many factors that are occurring, and that's why I think that the timeline and the timeline windows, like the range, can be more harmful than helpful in certain situations, because we don't want people waiting 10 days, right, when maybe they should follow up the next day, right? So we want to leave that discretionary clause there in for the designee, because they should ultimately know best, right? I understand that that hasn't always been the case, and that's where a lot of this comes from, right? But if all things are going as they should be and everything's trained and people are doing what they're supposed to do, and that accountability measure that I've kind of been talking about is in place, then they should know when the appropriate time within that 30 days is to follow up. And that's kind of like within 30 days, right? So when that 30-day window hits and I don't see a follow-up in there, now someone's going to be held accountable, right? But if it's like that 20 to 30 day window, that also makes it difficult for the person who's overseeing everything and compliance to follow up, because should I then wait until then? You know what I mean? So I think but I'd love you to send me the breakdown of that, because I do think that all these things should be considered, because we're talking about the safety of children. It's not,
The last thing is I understand what you're talking about with promptly and immediately.
Yep.
However, that's what got us into part of the situation.
Right.
We have, promptly has been months or never.
Right.
And the community just doesn't trust us to do it promptly, and or to know what promptly is. And so I think that for this initial BPIP, it is worth putting some restrictions on promptly and immediately, some definitions of what that should be. And you can caveat it with, say, the district should do this within 2 weeks. If extenuating circumstances exist, then the parents or caregivers will be given updates at least weekly. And we had that language in our first one of our drafts, but basically we want the decision to either be made or the stakeholders to be given weekly updates about what is actually happening and what is why things are taking so long, et cetera, et cetera. Because we don't want parents and kids to be held in limbo, not really knowing what's happening, not knowing if anybody is being investigated or anything going on, and just being sort of like forgotten.
Absolutely.
And so we need some timelines that the district promises to keep to, that will show good faith.
Absolutely. And I think I appreciate that perspective, and I 100% agree with you that the timelines are important. For me, and from my perspective in working in this field and in policy, putting a timeline in sometimes does create like a weird incentive for people to only meet that timeline and do nothing else. And that's really, I think, what we can see with some of the data. And the trust issue was not present. There was a trust issue before because of certain issues, and now there may be a trust issue now. I'm new, obviously, so I'm just going by what I see, but a trust issue now because we're seeing that, you know, we're seeing the data raw as it is with no named investigator and, you know, reports aren't being followed up on still. So like where's the accountability? So I think from that perspective, training, education, the implementation plan is like so important. And when we have those checklists and when we're getting into the schools, I'm a hard face to say no to. I'm just going to say that. You know what I mean? But truly, I think when it becomes part of the culture of all the districts that this is just what we do, you know, and it does take time, and it takes time to build that trust back, and I understand that. I really do. And I empathize and sympathize with everybody, with the community, because I heard that in the working groups, and I could feel that, and I want to listen, and I'm happy to be, you know, receive all the emails and listen to the stories because they're important and they're valid. So I want to receive all that feedback, and I think that there's probably some type of middle ground on the timeline piece where we can, you know, make everybody feel good and at least maybe not trust now, but move toward a feeling of trust on this is where we're headed, and this is, you know, something that we can all feel kind of okay about. Maybe not good, but.
Yeah. Define promptly. Yeah. Bridget?
So first, I want to say I'm really happy to have you. This is the work we've been waiting for.
Thank you.
Since we passed our policy in August of '24. And you're just speaking to my heart with checklists and SOPs.
Thank you.
And procedures that aren't duplicative, so a teacher doesn't look at it and say, oh, paperwork, but they're like, oh, yes, I did it.
Thank you.
You know, so really happy about that. I like the data triangulation as well. I think that gives you the whole picture, and it lines up exactly with what we were hearing, like the length of time the reports were sitting out there. The fact that like some reports were just getting lost. The people don't know who the person they were supposed to talk to was or follow up with or who to go to. People may not have even known about the family center or the mental health person who's gonna be over this. So like the more ways we're communicating out that you're here and you're on board and that your heart and your skills are right there, I'm really excited for that. So
Thank you.
thank you for all that. Welcome aboard.
Thank you.
I have like a couple little things. I think that piece of it's not clear who's responsible, and this might be like a data thing, but could they, when you file the BRIM, the student or whatever, say, you're at this school, so this person is responsible, or, you know, I don't know how updated you have to keep that, you know, because
Right.
rules change and people move and whatever, but like, imagine saying, if you haven't heard back within, I think we say 3 days in the policy, they have, the family or the reporter needs to hear back. If you haven't heard back within 3 days, it's this person's role to follow up with you, so.
Absolutely.
And then just going to that August 24 policy, like, I don't know, this is how I think about it. Like, you've got the Constitution and then the laws, and the laws have to align with the Constitution. Our policy is the Constitution. So if our policy says 3 days report to families, 10 days to complete an investigation, reporting back to families weekly, those are timelines that aren't flexible. So promptly, not promptly, doesn't matter. Those ones are constitutional. After that, you have the wiggle room to make sure that you're doing it in a way that that's responsive to what you're hearing and what you need. But I would just say, like, make sure you're going back to the Constitution, because we, you know, most democracies like to operate within it. And that's sort of how it works. Policy and then procedure under it is sort of like the establishment of that. So the other thing I would say is, like, even tonight, I was like trying to Google to find our last final policy, so look for the August 24 version, because I think that it's in board docs like 6 times.
I have December.
Oh, December, okay,
Yep.
yep, that could be it.
Yeah, I have it right here.
There could be one after that, but I knew to look for the one where we fought with certain dates.
I think Board Docs has
Oh,
one.
you don't want to talk to the internet, William.
Oh.
Anyway, my last point, if you've got, yeah, the latest one is the most recent one, so it's possible that we voted on it in the fall, but it was that August 24 draft we brought forward for the second read that I
Yeah,
think we
the
ended up
adoption,
bringing
I
through.
think, is the
Okay.
December, yep. so it may have been.
And just that we have like really, we worked really hard and we heard so much from families during that time, how important it was for them to have the firm timelines in place, so.
Absolutely.
We want to make sure, the really last point I have is, oh, sorry.
No, you were talking about constitution and policy
Yeah,
and
yeah.
everything. And I know in that policy, the line says the superintendent's designee or designee shall promptly investigate. So the language from the BTIP in terms of promptly is in the current policy.
Yeah, and but within 10 days, it needs to be.
No, that's something else. And like, there's a series of time. So the policy, we had this conversation, and I'm not gonna go there. The policy also reads as procedure. And there's a series of timelines and things that are in there, that we understand. But I just want to be clear, like, the first line says promptly investigates. So, and that's copied in the BTIP.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah, but, and I mean, like, not to go back and forth, but like, obviously longer than 10 days would be the antithesis of promptly then, since we've already laid out those timelines as what would be the
Right.
maximum.
Yeah.
But there, one other thing that I put sort of like, after reading the BIP, like, before I met you and saw how much like thought you put into it, so I just have that like critical academic eye, and I'm sort of thinking like,
Sure.
how do we measure this? How do we know when we're doing it? So whether it's climate surveys or, for example, we have really high staff conduct expectations in there. But how do we measure it? How do we know that kids feel comfortable to report? Do they even know where to report if they feel uncomfortable with something by an adult, etc.? Restorative practices, I think as well, like having X number of daily like having a daily circle, having the level 1 completed everywhere. Okay, this number level 2 meetings, like you can measure like that, but then how are you measuring the outcomes? And I think trauma sensitive is something that I always see like that in schools too. We use it warm and fuzzy, we feel good, but how are we measuring the outcomes? So that'd be
Yeah.
my last point.
Definitely. Yeah. No, thank you for all those points. I really appreciate that. And thank you for being so welcoming. I appreciate that as well. In terms of the continuous quality improvement and data collection, that's something that I don't think anybody really wants to see my mega spreadsheet. It looks like the inner workings of a mad person, but I, it is all part of the sort of, I guess, master plan to, align the districts across the social emotional learning, like we talked about, and the bullying and prevention, with the trauma-informed lens, as well as, there are other things that are on there as well, which we're, certainly do not have time to go too deep into tonight, but Dr. Z talked about the dashboard that is on, everyone's wish list as well. Right now, we're not in a place with data collection to be able to, automate and populate a dashboard. However, there are, I'm meeting with somebody, I think, next week to kind of talk about what could be possible with what we have. I met with the some surveillance folks yesterday from Spiffy and, talking way ahead of time in advance of our next biennial survey that we're going to do with students, and just like making sure that all of these things are on our radar, and we have like a campaign that we're going to put on the website, and engaging Seth in that, and making sure that like everything all makes sense, and that's sort of what my expertise lies in, is just like from a systems perspective, that all of it, it's like my brain is like a web, and the one thing that's in the middle is student safety and support and well-being and wellness, and and that's really the core of it. So my hope is that everything starts to come together, and it has. Even I've been here 6 weeks so far, and really everyone has been so welcoming and so nice at the schools, and I'm sort of just embedding myself so that when we do start to train folks in the 26-27 school year, they already know me. All the clinicians, all the principals that are still going to be here, they're all, they all know. It's like our own personal cheers, I'm dating myself, but we're, everybody knows my name and my face, and it's easier like that, so a friendly face to train versus somebody that's coming from who knows where to tell you how to do your job. That's usually doesn't go over very well. So that's the hope, is that it all sort of comes together. But continuous quality improves CQI. That's the name of the game, and making sure that we're constantly collecting that information back in a way that's meaningful and usable.
Thank you, William. So I have William, Tim, Deb, me, and then Laura Jane, just so we know how it's going.
So, thank you for coming.
Yeah.
And I'm very glad that you're here. And Dr. Z will tell you this is my thing, so this will be the one thing I'm going to bug you about.
Sure.
Anyway, so the trust issue, I think, is not that we don't trust you, it's we don't trust the buildings. So we have not had implementation because, in my opinion, administrators for the district were not able to necessarily oversee what each building did. So who's going to hold the buildings accountable if they're not all in line with all three districts, would be my first question. You don't have to answer that tonight, but I guess I would like to see that built out in the plan, is who is going to hold all buildings, all districts accountable to be in line? Because that we have not had. Okay. Another thing is that you talked about trying to have one system, not multiple systems. We're also supposed to be tracking harassment. We don't track harassment.
Right.
I know it's not part of the BPIP, but like we have this BRIM, which is separate than the plan. But right now I feel like we need two systems because we're not tracking harassment. So I hope that we can somehow track harassment using one system. The checklist and the stuff, you're going to bring that back to us in June, so that's exciting. I am happy about that. The timelines, we do say that you investigate promptly in the policy, but then the next sentence, it says that you contact caregivers within 3 days. So we need to make sure that is in the BPIP because it's not. That timeline, and the other timeline is that the investigation is completed within 10 days or minimum weekly contact with caregivers, and that's not in BPIP. So we did put a 10-day limit.
Gotcha.
However, the very next part says, if you can't meet that, it may not say that exactly, but it's basically if you can't do that, minimally you need to contact caregivers weekly. So that needs to be worked in because that's from our policy. That needs to be worked in. And we talked about protocols. That's coming. Checklist. Sorry. No? No, I think I am.
Good for now?
Oh, the one thing on there, I do have one more thing, sorry. You have in there a 30 school day
Okay.
for follow-up. It says 30 school days. In our policy, it says 2 to 4 weeks.
Okay.
So it's not 30 school days, because 30 school days would be like a month and a half. So we need to adjust those timelines to be within policy.
We'll take a closer look at the timelines just overall, just to address all the
And
concerns.
then I would love if either the region and Amherst and Pelham could grant us, or we don't need granting, but if the policy subcommittee could meet with you at a meeting
Definitely.
just for this, I would love that.
Sure. Absolutely.
I don't know if we need,
I don't think so. I think the
Okay.
policy said.
just because
me,
then we
team
could
can
iron out all these
have
little
that
details,
conversation.
it would be just more streamlined, and I think we all do better in face-to-face, and we wouldn't have to have all of us here with all of our opinions.
I think that makes sense. That makes sense.
Thank you.
Do you want me to address any
No,
any
you
of
don't
the
have
questions?
to.
Okay, those are
It's
just
fine.
more comments
Yeah.
than anything. Okay.
I appreciate everything
Happy
you're
to
doing.
talk offline about any of that too, and if you want to email me. Yep, okay.
No.
Okay.
Tim?
So Colleen, thank you very much.
Sure.
I'm very happy that you're here. The presentation you gave was very assuring. This is not an issue I've learned enough about yet. I've kind of been, on the tail end of following everyone else's work and understanding the history of the issue, which is quite complex. And so I'm grateful that you're here. The presentation you gave was very helpful to me. So I want to second that I think it's important that we track harassment and define harassment and include that in a formal way, both in terms of what we're investigating, the data that we're looking at together, and also the training outcomes that you're talking about. I think we all have a lot to learn about harassment, right, in a complex school district, and this is a good opportunity to build that in from the beginning. I'm really happy to hear you talk in the way you're talking about culture, right? This is a cultural problem. This is a problem of culture and relationship. I'm happy to hear you talking about trauma-informed lens. I'm happy to hear all of these social emotional learning focus that you're talking about. And I think that you being in a position of being the district subject matter expert that people grow used to turning to for this is very important for cultural change. And that will be true for staff, that will be true for caregivers, school committee members, and perhaps students. I don't know. I don't know how much student-facing work you're going to do, right? But I sort of imagine that you'll be doing more adult-facing work. Yeah. So I would say that one of the important things, and maybe this is kind of how I would think about how can we regulate timelines, enforce timelines, and use timelines for the best possible outcomes. One thing I would say is that having regular reports to school committees, just like this, is going to help a lot, both in understanding, you know, how well are the current practices aligning with expected timelines, and more importantly, if they're deviating from what we want, what the policy says we have to do in terms of timelines, then we can explore in this public meeting why, what's going on there, what can we learn from that data, and what can we do to respond to it, right? I think that that's going to be an important thing, both for optimizing the policy and optimizing the BPIP, but also just rebuilding trust throughout the community. This committee space is not the only place where trust can be built, but it's an important place for rebuilding and regaining, re-earning trust. So those regular reports will be important, and I think, and maybe this is a comment more to fellow committee members, because I agree that the timelines are, spelled out fairly clearly in the policy, quite clearly in the policy, and they're very deliberate, they're very intentional, a lot of design thinking went into it. And there's some flexibility there, which William pointed out. It does say the investigation shall be completed within 10 school days from the date of the report, and it goes on, and there's an at a minimum clause at the end of that where the superintendent can, communicate with the caregivers, about the status of the investigation. So it's not this, iron cage of a timeline. But at the same time, in learning from the data about what is happening in the district over the long term, over not over months, but over years, we may start to learn that some of the policy is leading to less than optimal outcomes. And so that'll be our job as committee members to listen for that in your reports and think to ourselves, like, maybe there is a way that we can tweak our policy to lead to better outcomes. And the outcomes that I have in mind, you've already talked about, it's basically false negatives and false positives, right? I mean, we don't want either of those. We especially don't want false negatives saying this is not bullying, that's not bullying, this is not bullying, for whatever reason, right? If the policy has something in it, or if the BPIP has something in it that is leading to false negatives, our hope is to be able to see that in the data, in our discussions that we have here, and then make corrections wherever those corrections need to be made.
Definitely.
That's my thoughts. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Tim. I appreciate those comments. And just to sort of note a couple things that William said and that you said about the harassment and also self-harm, those are two things that are definitely on our radar, at the leadership level to begin tracking in a meaningful way. And to also just note that a good amount of, because there's, and all the bullying reports in BRIM, they come with oftentimes a very large narrative portion in the notes, right? And many of those unsubstantiated reports that don't end up meeting the definition of bullying maybe meet the definition of a behavioral issue or harassment or, potential self-harm that could occur or, other precursor behaviors that we can identify earlier on that, aligns with the social emotional learning that we talked about with more tier 1 supports at earlier stages in the buildings, just across the board. But if we had a mechanism to track harassment and, hopefully avoid self-harm, but if we had a mechanism to track harassment specifically, then we could potentially, divert some of those from those unsubstantiated reports and have less false positives or false negatives. And people would ideally know where to report that, right? So it all just kind of goes back to that larger system of the who, what, where, when, why of what needs to happen in order to make a report of something that's happening to a student.
Right. Thank you. Deb?
Thanks for all this. Your structure is very helpful. I particularly like the parallel work for the SEL learning, the work plan. I think that's really important, and I appreciate you bringing that to this work. In terms of what you were just speaking to, false positives, false negatives, people using the BRIM system for other purposes, which came up in a previous meeting. I wonder if we could expand it and decrease perhaps the number of people who report issues that don't end up being bullying because somebody's just reaching out for help in some way, shape, or form. Maybe somebody doesn't feel like they're being harassed. Maybe somebody doesn't feel like they're being bullied. But maybe somebody is going to use the platform to say, I don't know anybody in the building, and this is happening, and I would like some assistance. So that's yet another thought of how we support students. You don't need to answer that right away. What else do I have down here? The checklist we had looked for, and I understand there will be a new checklist, but I had hoped to get some of that data reported out, the timelines reported out in our data report so we can inform our community, not just like the beginning, middle, and end, or whether or not we're following protocols, but yes, 70% of students are, 70% of caregivers are, I don't even remember what it is, but there's, I'm sorry?
Like, you're trying to figure out how many are being notified.
Right,
every day.
right, yeah. So the sub-steps would be helpful for us to understand and communicate with the community. And then also in terms of things that would be helpful to me, the BPIP and the data, but some sort of intermediate information. So the training, I don't know if you're intending or if I missed it in what you presented, but to understand what work was done for implementation with the educators and staff so that we can have some understanding in between of what the BPIP is, what the staff is being how their staff is being trained, and then of course the ending results. And I liked a lot the idea of, if a student has a 504 or an IEP, that there's a convene meeting called immediately. I think we recently heard that may be, the timeline on that might be difficult to implement. So maybe tracking that to find out how frequently or how the time between when the meeting happens and when the person is called. I mean, I know that some of this just involves being able to coordinate schedules with families and communication. So that's going to be something that will help us understand that part of it.
Yep.
I would love to see your master spreadsheet if you're really offering to share it.
That's her thing.
But, you know, and then how often would we expect data reports? Because that's something that it's not clear to me. How frequently is a reasonable length of time? And in particular, when I spoke to somebody about looking at trends, they mentioned there's certain key times in the school year where bullying arises. So that would be information that would be, well, not necessarily like every so many months, but just letting us know what the ebb and flow of these issues is.
So in terms of the answer for timelines, right now, the superintendent is tied to providing quarterly, it was voted and was directed by the committee, the regional committee, to provide quarterly updates. That Colleen has been in, you said 6 weeks? Yeah. And in those 6 weeks, she's worked with the BRIM system in terms of identifying, filling the gaps. She's already worked to shift just how the data presentation is presenting from last evening. She knows of the current quarterly update, and we already had the conversation that this is something that's very critical to the school committees, and we're probably going to have to increase updates next year. I did connect with a provider to see if they could help us digitize our checklist, because a part of that is, you know, we're looking at the checklist as a paper copy that's attached in BRIM. That it actually would be like a manual entering to determine if 70%. So there's a lot of gaps that I plan to present in the process when I present my goals at the end. Artifacts at the end, and talk about those learning points that we kind of knew from before, but also the progress that we're moving towards to get the dashboard created, to possibly digitize things. Colleen has a lot of great ideas, and in her work in systems, she's developed a series of like dashboard designs, dashboards, online forms, digitizing forms, aligning to policies and procedures. So letting her do her thing is what we're going to do and support.
And my last question, and this is not resolvable now, but I mean, this is about, we have policy, we have a plan, we have training, but just overall, how effective are we being as a district in supporting students in these very difficult areas? And it's not necessarily just the lens of harassment or self-harm, but overall how, and since you're here and that's your shtick,
Definitely, yeah.
that'd be great to kind of get information about, or a program that gives us a more complete view of how we're supporting students in these very critical ways.
Definitely. That's an important question, and thank you for asking that. And I think just one note on the BRIM to follow up on what Dr. Z said on your earlier question before I answer this last question, and I might forget it because the things just, whoop, there it goes. A squirrel. And now I forgot the new question. Hold on. Give me a second. The reporting. Oh, BRIM. We have when I met with the BRIM folks, you know, I had a lot of questions about what was possible. And usually data folks don't like when I ask all of these questions. Or IS folks don't like it either. But we have the capability to add flags. So like if someone has an IEP, or if something, an IEP evaluation process was triggered during this investigation, we can flag that. So then when the data, when we download the mega spreadsheet, we can see those flags in the reporting system. So those will be extremely helpful moving forward. And then on the timeline piece too, I think as we collect data and think about what makes the most sense, so I'm just downloading it at weekly, basically, to kind of see the trends over time. So if there are time, specific time frames throughout the year, if it's semester based, if it's quarterly, if it's after break, if we can see those things and the trends over time and identify this is when, the behaviorally kids are starting to, there's more reports or whatever that may be, then we can say, all right, this is what we're seeing over this period of time. when would you like to see the report on a, you know, a more frequent basis or whatever it may be? And we can always send things, you know, proactively as well. Okay, that's a great question on effectiveness in supporting students. It comes from the top down, truthfully. And I think in my role, from what I've seen so far, I feel very supported in my role here, from my team in the Family Engagement Center. It's from Dr. Z, from, you know, administration all the way down. And I think that transcends to how I'm engaging with the teams at the schools. Hopefully they feel supported by me. And all I know is that I feel very welcomed when I walk into the schools that I've walked into, and I've, you know, bi-weekly have gone to the elementary schools so far and just sat in on their meetings and just listened. Sometimes they ask me questions, sometimes they don't, but I'm, you know, just sitting there. And I think that support for staff coming from leadership and from administrators also, you know, it has a trickle-down effect to students because they feel supported in their roles to do their job better, and they can ask questions and know that they'll get an answer on, like, we're constantly, I mean, since I've been here, right, Marta, we're like getting a lot of questions about, like, do you have a resource for this, or what do we do if this happens, or, and I don't know to the extent that that was happening prior to my coming here, but I know that it's happening now, and that it has to have an impact on students, right? So these things take time to unfold on a much broader level, but I think that we'll be able to see it with data, you know, because that's the goal. So, thank you.
Thank you. So I put myself on the list. So welcome. Thank you so much for coming. I think so much of this is a lot of what the committee and the community has been looking for a long time, and so I'm really glad to see all of the work. It's clear how much work and how thoughtful went into this. So my couple of notes, I am really glad to hear about all the data that is happening or intended to happen. But my concern is more about like it actually working on the ground level, right? Like the data's great, but if it's not actually doing the thing it's supposed to do, then the data's no good, right? So I think probably my favorite part of this whole thing is the accountability mechanisms. Like, grown-ups can write their names on their work. We ask kids to write their names on their work that they turn in every day in every class. Grown-ups can write their name on the work that they're doing too. So like, that seems like a really simple fix for a really silly problem. Yeah. And the other thing I really like about this accountability piece is the documented extension process, right? So we have some like pretty clear timelines in our policy about when the expectations for things to happen is. And I hear you that sometimes things don't work exactly how they're supposed to, or there are extenuating circumstances for whatever reason. I think making sure that if those timelines cannot be met for some reason, that there is clear documentation of like how you tried to make it happen, but I don't know, this family was out of town for 2 weeks, or there is some other extenuating circumstances. So I think that documentation process of like what the grown-ups are trying to do will make a big difference for helping to build that trust and accountability that we've really been looking for. I think those are my highlights. Like, write your name on your work. I think this is a silly problem to have. Okay. Laura Jean.
I'm also very glad you're here. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks.
And you went to BU social work school. So did I.
Oh, great.
Okay. Long time, probably 100 years before you did. It sort of leads off of what Sarah Beth was mentioning. I'm less interested in top-down kind of leadership stuff and much more interested in seeing how the educators and the staff who already have been thinking and worrying about their students and not having necessarily access to this system in the most effective ways across the district, right? Different schools with different efficacy. I know there was a social emotional learning training last year, I think it was last year, like 2025, but this school year, I think, that had mixed reviews, right? And there's definitely been, what I would like to see as part of this being effective is doing some kind of data gathering from the educators, from the staff, to find out where they feel like their gaps are. Because there's a lot of assumptions like, oh, you need a social emotional learning, and then half of the staff have never heard the words before, and the other half have been through 30 trainings, right? And learning all, like doing the welcoming schools trainings and doing like, we should be doing some real, all these pieces like doing anti-racism trainings and undoing white supremacy and working on all of those things, which are all pieces of this, right? Because we know that in our very multicultural district, there is that my time's up?
Your 3 minutes are up.
My 3 minutes are up. It's probably a good idea, actually, to put a timer on me. Sorry. So I'll try to be brief. What I'm really wanting to do, because I feel like it really dovetails critically with gathering this data, is making sure that it isn't so top-down, that there isn't this like, okay, leadership saying to, because it's often the bullying and the harassment and things are observed by the staff first and then brought to the guidance count staff or the school administrators. And so to empower the staff to feel like when they do bring this to their attention, that it's going to actually have meaning, that's going to be a big part of this, right? Yeah. And that's going to matter a lot. Feeling like, oh, that student that I was interested in, that I was worried about, is getting followed up, and I know they're getting followed up, and it doesn't just disappear into the void, right? That's going to be wonderful. So and I'm not asking you to answer this at all right now, but just to think about, like, how can we make sure that we're providing training that's age appropriate, right? For the elementary schools, it's going to be different than for the middle school, than for the high school. And how are we making sure that educators who are unprepared to handle this are getting prepared, and educators who have already been through a million trainings don't have to sit through the same thing but can take more advanced intervention? And how can people learn how to be good bystander intervention? And finally, promise this is the last thing, Deb, as you put on your timer, working with students to do bystander intervention stuff, which I know has happened, but it's so effective, and especially if we start really, really young, like in the elementary level. So just that none of that is for you to say, oh, yeah, I have a plan for all of these things. I don't expect that at all, but I just wanted to name them. I can see Dr. Z already has a plan for all of them.
I don't, but I won't prescribe to it. I do have a question, or maybe you can send this to me afterwards. You said a SEL training that occurred in 2020 in this school year.
Yeah.
Was that district-led or school-led? And I say that because.
It was outside.
Okay.
I think they brought someone in from maybe South Hadley.
Okay, then that was not district-led. I'll have to find out if
Yeah.
you can share what school or wherever.
Try to remember. I know it happened at the high school and at the middle school.
Okay, so then I'm gonna say that the only one that I know of would be the recent Welcoming Schools training that occurred.
Yeah, it wasn't that.
And what we gathered feedback from various schools in the last module that was done, that they felt in all of the work and training that they've been through in the districts, that it was a repetition for them.
Yeah.
So we then surveyed them to find out, give us feedback. How are you feeling about this? What do you feel? What can change? What do you need? We were able to then work with Welcoming Schools. We sent that feedback to them. HRC has really been good in terms of being a collaborative partner. And they were able to then develop an upcoming training, which will be coming up soon. I think it's in May. So if you can share with us, if you get feedback around trainings, sometimes they're school-led because the principals and the leadership team can do a training on their day. We split early release days. Sometimes it's district days, sometimes it's school-based days. But I would like to know so that if they need to give feedback to the presenters to shift and change, they can. And if it's us, we can do the same thing because we're not afraid of doing that. And we do survey our educators and say, give us feedback.
I will definitely find out. I do remember that the middle school staff went to the high school. That part I remember. But yes, and I think, I think also there's resources at UMass too that we could be drawing on, like Stonewall Center, and there's lots of other places that could do that kind of thing. So anyway, yeah, great.
No, I appreciate the comments, and I just wanted to, not to answer any of the comments, but just to clarify the top-down perspective I was speaking to was more for like support, just so like the support comes from the top down, and that's what I'm feeling right now. But in terms of the information gathering and the qualitative analysis that I'm conducting in the exploration phase for the SEL, not so much the BPIP implementation, the SEL, we're not here to talk about it tonight, but just so the exploration phase is happening now, and then over the summer will be more like contact and more specific interviews with folks, and that information gathering is really just coming like from the people that are doing the work, and that's the most important thing to me, and what's most valid in my work. So just wanted to clarify that the support is coming, is raining down on us, and that typically feels good, but everything else comes from the ground up. So thank you.
Thank you. William, final comment.
Yes, so,
I told you he'd be back.
yeah, I know, sorry. I had an experience in multiple schools, and the letters that come out after bullying is not found, or bullying is found, need to be consistent, because they're not, or they weren't. They weren't.
They were.
They may be now, I don't know. And the language could be written in a way that is more gentle to the families. So like if you say that like the report is, I can't remember the exact words, but it didn't say it was like void, but like sometimes the words sound really harsh if it's not bullying, but yet it's still harassment. So there's still pain that the child felt or that the family is feeling. And so saying that it's not bullying is legally what you have to say, but trying to word it in a way that's a little bit more gentle, and also understanding that you're not talking about there wasn't harm, right? So just making sure that those letters from the buildings are more consistent, and then the language is thoughtful, if that makes sense.
Could start with
When
resources.
you're building that.
Yeah.
They are, but it's legalese, but I
Right.
agree with what you're saying, and we brought that up to Michael Joyce, so
Yeah.
that's part of what we're gonna review, yes.
And
Could
then
start with resources.
I'm really happy that this is landing in Family Center. Since I've been here for a few years now, it was in director, it was in like the director of student services or SSO, whatever that, it was under that role for a while. So I hope that y'all can work together, but I hope that it does land with one department, so then you have like one lead and you don't have multiple people trying to do it. So I appreciate that. The Desi just had their like quarterly meeting, and they did this. They talked about this, and I've not watched it, but people may want to watch that because they also talked about how they have safe schools. I think a safe schools initiative that we could tap into or use for SEL or whatever. Anyway, so I was going to mention that if people want to go watch that on their own, it is on Desi's website, and it was recorded.
They've also started LGBTQ
Correct.
safe schools.
That's what I was talking about.
initiative.
Okay.
Oh, sorry.
They've also sent out in, I was reading it today, that under the Safe Schools Initiative, they started like a site council for LGBTQ students. There's a lot of initiative that's come forth through DESI recently, so we've been reviewing it, and so we'll continue to. And they're talking about grant funding.
Yes, I saw
We
that.
have a long-standing relationship with them, because they've done a lot of work with us, so it's just cementing and continuing to collaborate, but yes, we work with them very close.
And thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you very much.
We don't often clap, so that's.
Okay.
That was a really good discussion.
Good job, team. Thank you, Colleen. Okay. Policy.
So now we're gonna
Take
try
it away.
try to do this as quick as we can and thoughtful. So the first one we have is relabeling policy GBEB. we're, we're relabeling it because we have another policy that is labeled GBEB. And so we're just moving fingerprinting to ADAA.
No, ADDA.
ADDA, sorry. And in the queue is a new ADDA and a new ADDAR that is coming at our next joint meeting.
On the 20th.
Yes. So this, we're not gonna I'm not asking to vote to change ADDA right now. We're just changing the label. We're using the same policy we have and just changing the label.
I move for the region that we relabel policy GBEB fingerprinting to ADDA fingerprinting.
Second, Deb.
Any further discussion? All those in favor? Excellent. Amherst, go.
Oh, jeez.
I move that we relabel policy, I make the same motion for the Amherst School Committee.
Second.
Second, Bridget, everybody in favor? It passes.
Yes.
Happy now?
Yes.
All right.
Then we're going to start our second reads. So we did the first reads in January. And then we took everyone's suggestions, if we had suggestions. If not, then they're the same. So we're going to look at draft ADC first.
I've never heard of little cigars.
I move to accept policy ADC as presented.
Second.
All those.
Adopt.
Adopt. Sure. All those in favor at the region? Okay, it passes unanimously. Amherst.
I make the same motion for Amherst.
Second.
All in favor? Passes.
And then we're going to move to GBEE.
Point of order, just a request from the minutes taker. Maybe the same person could move and the same person could second each of these, and I won't get lost.
I move to adopt policy GBEE for the region.
Second.
All those in favor? Perfect. Unanimous.
I move the same for Amherst.
I
Rich?
think it was.
Was it
I think it was Laura Jane. I wrote down Laura
Second.
Jane.
Second.
All those in favor? Passes.
The next policy is GBEB. It's on,
Were there any edits to any of these between first and second reads?
it was a long time ago.
I don't think there were. I don't think there were.
I don't think there were. No.
Okay.
Or there was maybe a few. I think maybe Sarah Marshall had a few little tweaks of different little words that we tweaked, but nothing substantial.
Like grammar, not
Correct.
meat.
Yes.
Gotcha. We voted GBEB. Next one.
Oh no, we haven't done GBEB yet.
yeah.
That was
No.
Did-
GBEE.
I wrote it down wrong. I apologize.
I move to adopt policy GBEB as presented.
Second.
All those in favor at the region? Yes.
For Amherst, I move to adopt policy GBEB as presented.
Second.
All those in favor? Passes.
The next policy is GBJ, which is personnel records. And
I move to adopt policy GBJ.
Second?
Any discussion? It looked like maybe you had a comment.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that all these new policies, we never had these policies, but it is not a reflection on HR. It's not a reflection on our district. They were doing all these practices. We're just codifying it and putting it in policy.
Excellent, thank you. All those in favor of the region? Sweet, passes unanimously.
I make the same motion for Amherst for GBJ.
Second?
All those in favor? It passes.
Next policy is GBGC, staff health and physical examinations.
I move to adopt policy GBGC for the region.
Second?
All those in favor of the region?
Which one are we up to?
GBGC.
GBGC.
GBGC. I make the same motion for GBCG, GBCG,
GBGC.
I make the same motion for Amherst.
There you go.
Second.
All those in favor?
Next is GCBB, employment of principals and administrators.
I move to adopt policy GCBB for the region.
No.
Sorry, I second, sorry.
All those in favor at the region? 8. Unanimous, thank you.
I move the same thing for policy GCBB for Amherst. All those in favor?
Oh, no.
Bridget?
Yes.
Okay, passes 4-0-0-1.
Next up is policy
GCO.
GCO, evaluation of professional staff.
I move to adopt policy GCO for the region.
I second.
Any discussion? All those in favor at the region? Unanimous.
I move to adopt GCO as presented for Amherst.
Second?
All those in favor? Passes 4-0-0-1.
1. Next up is policy GCQF, suspension and dismissal of employees.
I move to adopt policy GCQF for the region.
Second?
Any discussion at the region? All those in favor? 8, unanimous, thank you.
I move to adopt GCQF as presented for the Amherst schools.
Second?
All in favor? Passes 4-0-0-1.
The next policy is GDO, evaluation of support staff.
I move to adopt policy GDO for the region.
Second?
Any discussion? All those in favor at the region? Unanimous.
I move to adopt GDO for the Amherst schools.
Second?
All in favor? Passes 4-0-0-1.
The next one is GCK, professional staff assignments and transfers.
I move to adopt policy GCK for the region.
Second?
Any discussion? All those in favor? It is unanimous.
I move to adopt GCK for the Amherst schools.
A second?
All in favor? Passes 4-0-0-1.
Okay.
So now we're moving to first reads. So the first one policy we're looking at is GCJ, professional teacher status. And this one had gotten lost in all the letters.
I
And
think that was my fault last time.
no, this had gotten lost in the letters, I think, between us and council.
Oh,
And so it came
Not
back
my
on the
fault.
later side. So this is the first read, so if anyone has any comments or edits,
I just have a question.
yeah.
I know we discussed this in policy committee, but this policy states that you have to be either have served 1 year and be a certified teacher, regardless of where you served before, or if you're not a certified teacher, you can still be assigned professional status if you have within 1 year, if you have served at least 1 year, sorry, if you have already attained professional status in either Amherst, Pelham. That doesn't, in one of the other districts within the Amherst, Pelham districts. And I know this specifically excludes Leverett and Shutesbury, and I'm wondering if that is because specifically Amherst and Pelham are part of Union 28 and under the same superintendency, and Shutesbury and Leverett, even though they're part of the region, aren't under the same superintendency.
Oh, yeah. Can you come sit up here so we can hear you?
Just remind me, sorry.
That's okay. So, Leverett and Shutesbury elementary staff, professional staff are under a different superintendent. So that is why it would only pertain to educators within the Pelham Elementary, Amherst Elementary School.
And they're also the same union, correct? The Amherst and Pelham
Yes,
ones,
and
okay.
all of our, within all of the 3 districts are all covered under the same union. That's correct. So that's why, yeah, Leverett and Shutesbury elementary teachers would not be included as part of this.
Bridget?
Well, we have Jen here. I remember you explaining this to me in the meeting in a way I was satisfied, and then again, now I feel not, like I'm remembering past history.
Yes.
And that number 1, where we say the superintendent may basically put someone into professional status after 1 year.
Right.
And the reason why you thought that was valuable, even though I think our impetus maybe was not to put it there.
So, and this went before, this went before legal review too. So the policy can't be more restrictive than law, right? And what the statute allows is that a superintendent, after 1 complete year of employment to a certified teacher, can award them PTS. So, while I understand definitely the committee's concern, and I want to say this in a way that's politically correct, I appreciate and I understand, right, the importance of the 3 years, or the completion of those full 3 years of in being certified in the position before attaining professional teacher status. I'm a proponent of that. Like I understand and I appreciate and believe in the importance of that. The policy and the legal advice the legal counsel shared with us too is that the policy cannot be more restrictive than the law.
The policy can be more restrictive than the law, but this was no wiggle room. Because we had pushed for policy to have more wiggle room in that, and we was a pretty.
We got a pretty hard.
It was a hard no. It wasn't. I don't even want to say
Legal,
pretty.
yeah.
It was a no.
It was a hard
but it's
no
not
from
because
legal.
policy. Because like, our bullying policy is more restrictive than the law.
Right.
And because it goes above the law. But I think that the teachers have the right to be thought of as, to get the professional status or whatever it is. And so it's a little bit different of a nuance.
Yes.
And so we can't take that ability, and I don't remember if we can't take the ability away from the superintendent or if we can't take the ability away from the professional staff. But there was something that we're not allowed to take
Right.
that action that the superintendent can do, or that the faculty could possibly get it. Somewhere in there, we're not allowed to mess with that. So that's why
Right.
we had to step back the language that we were hopeful for, because it was not going to be possible.
Did I already move? No.
No, we're just in
We're just,
discussion.
Can we
Yeah.
do discussion before, or do we need to move?
we don't have to move because it's just a first read.
Okay.
Yep.
Can I,
Yes, I have Laura Jane and then Deb.
I had a very similar question. I'm wondering about the language of certified teacher versus educator or staff person. I'm wondering about, is it possible, and I hear what you're saying, that there was a legal pushback. Is it possible to have the school committee be part of that process in any way so that the superintendent may recommend professional teacher status to a certified educator and pending the approval of
That
this?
is out of our lane.
There's no way around this, is what
That
you're
is out of
saying.
our lane.
of
We
our lane,
are
right.
not responsible. We have like the superintendent and like 3 other people we are like mildly responsible for in terms of personnel.
And we had a long
is-
discussion with our council on
I'm
this.
sure.
We really did.
I believe you.
I
I'm
can-
just trying to think if there's like
we-
anything, I mean, you probably thought of everything, but
Because it was Jennifer, I think it was different 4 of us, and we really did push on this a lot.
Yeah,
And we really
Hard no.
tried, and
hard no.
it's a hard no. I can go back and ask, I'll find the notes and clarify, why it's a hard no. Or I'll reach out to Mark and ask him if he can explain it to us, and I'll be able to bring that explanation back for our second read.
Right. Yeah, we had tons of discussion around this, and like I said, it was, I understand and appreciate, and there was just a very hard no about why we couldn't have something that, or a policy, rather than not restricted, but just limited what is statutorily a right of an educator to request and receive from their superintendent. In terms of your question about certified teacher versus educator or staff member, is to be very specific when we talk about positions that require a DESE license. So
Okay.
PTS is tied directly to your licensure as well. And so there are certain positions within the district that don't hold a DESE license. We may require a license for, but for instance, there's not a license for a dean of students, right? But we require that they hold a educator license through the
Right.
department. So that's why it's very specific to saying a certified teacher.
I have no doubt that there was a lot of discussion about this. I'm just, is this true for like other districts all over the state?
Yeah.
It's like the same kind of language everywhere?
Yes.
It's a MGL.
Oh, Mass General laws.
Yep. Deb.
Is it against the law for the superintendent to inform the school committee that she is going to do this as long as that person isn't identified?
No, it's not against the law, and we can, certainly, this is just a first read, right? So we can go back and talk a little bit more and delve into, maybe there's a notification from the superintendent if she intends, or they intend to award PTS early to an educator, but no, that would not be against the law,
So
Why would it
to
have
my
to
understanding.
Why would it have to be not identified? Couldn't we do it in an executive session?
There's only very specific reasons why you can hold executive session.
yeah, I get going back to that, that's not really anywhere near our decision, but it is worthwhile knowing that it's happening. I think,
And then it's just oversight.
or just, yeah, keeping us informed. The second, I had another question, unrelated, about number 4. The district may, but this is if a teacher with professional status is displaced due to the abolishment of their position by the school committee, the district may, but is not required to, retain the individual in another legally authorized position for which they are qualified. Why wouldn't we require them to? I'm sure there's a reason, but I don't see it. If we have an educator in good standing in our district,
Right. So this is like boilerplate language, right, that MASC comes up with, but you have to, right, we have to keep in mind that we also have to abide by collective bargaining agreements, and there are already bumping rights and, clauses and protections for teachers who hold professional teacher status. I mean, right, when we're thinking about teachers who have tenure versus those who don't, the contract's very explicit and specific about how those teachers have certain protections in terms of bumping. So I believe that's why the language is probably in there, but we already have to do that because the CBA tells us we have to for teachers who have PTS.
so then for consistency, would it make sense to say, instead of but not required to, consistent with the CBU? It just would be worthwhile for the policy not to look inconsistent with the practice, which is what is required by our CBU.
So,
No,
can you say your question again, Deb? I think I'm.
She wants us to take out but is not required to. Just take those words out. But this is all coming back to policy. Policy gets to talk about it.
Yeah.
So it's all good.
I would just like somebody to pull up our policy to understand what our practices are based on our legal responsibility.
Anna?
I'm just gonna say, if the school committee eliminates a position, they say, you know what, we're not going to have a assistant principal, we're not gonna have a second assistant principal position in, I guess we can't say a second assistant, I think it would be more like, we're no longer going to have a dean of students. Then we don't have to take that dean of students and give them another job. Maybe we're eliminating the dean of students in part because it's somewhat unnecessary, in part because we don't have the budget for it any longer, and we're just like, we can't afford a dean of students. The collective bargaining agreement, if you say, we're not gonna have two deans of students, we're gonna eliminate one of them, the collective bargaining agreement would say the most senior dean of students stays and the junior one leaves. But if there's only, if it's the entire position, we don't have to say, okay, because you're more senior than this other person, we're gonna have you move over and take their job. We could do that, we don't have to do that. Maybe the person who's currently in that job is better qualified and has more experience doing that particular job, even though the other person is more senior. And, this just prevents us from having to say, we will give you a different job if we eliminate your position.
So can I clarify that just a
Is
little
that
bit?
true?
Yeah, let me clarify. And Dean of Students is actually a great example to use, right? Because there's not a Dean of Students license. However, let's say they hold, I'm just gonna pluck one, let's say they hold an English license, right? Or school adjustment counselor license, that'd probably be more appropriate. Let's say they hold a school adjustment counselor license. The Dean of Students position is abolished using this language. We get rid of it, the school committee decides to get rid of it. If they hold professional teacher status in the district, they do get to bump out a school adjustment counselor, another person who's in that position that license is required for, if they have more seniority than them. So they do have, they are allowed to do that, right? Where this would come into play is if we have a dean of students who holds their license, the only license they hold for that position is an assistant principal license. That brings a different dynamic into play because there are no positions within APEA, the bargaining unit in which they belong, for which that license is required, right? That's a different, right? Assistant principals belong to a different bargaining unit. This language, what it protects is to say is, well, if that position no longer exists, you hold no other license other than an AP license, there's no position that we, are required to bump you into because there's no position for which that license is required within your bargaining unit. So the language the way it is works. If there's a vacancy, right, let's say somewhere and they're qualified for and they don't need a specific license, so their AP license might work, then this language says, okay, we could put them in there because they're qualified and they have the skills and ability to do that work. But that's using that position is a great example of how this language here could work in that favor.
I would give you a gold star for that explanation. Thank you.
Very good.
Tim?
I think I'm just echoing Anna and Jen, but we don't want to change policy language to match practice. We want to create policy language that allows a range of potential practices. What we don't want, what we have to watch out for is policy that's in conflict with collective bargaining agreements. That's not something that we can have, right? So if we found a conflict between policy and collective bargaining agreements, we'd either have to bring it to joint policy or we'd have to bring it to the unions and say, like, let's figure out what needs to change. But as long as the policy is more flexible than the range of practices currently used, then we're good.
Okay. Good? Okay.
So just to clarify, we're going to, on GCJ, we're going to get a deeper definition of why we can't change number 1 from the attorney and bring that back. And then the idea of can we approve or can we be notified of who gets those professional status. I think that was everything that we're going to look at
Yes.
on that policy. So the next one we're going to look at is GBEA. And this one, we do have a current one. And I apologize that I didn't do the 2 and show you what the edits were and how we've changed it. So I apologize for that. I'm going to go through and tell you kind of what we changed. The opening statement is a little bit stronger. It adds more clear language that all staff must uphold the highest ethical standards. It shifts the expectation to more firm standards. The second thing was we clarified supervisory conflicts. We defined directly related parent, sibling, child, spouse, and spouse's family. And then we also included something new, which is romantic relationships. That was not in the old policy.
What about situationships?
We came up with romantic relationships, so. Also reinforce that no one may supervise or evaluate someone where there's a conflict exist. We changed how hiring and promotion conflicts are handled. In the old policy, superintendent filed notice before hiring and promotion. In the new policy, individual school committee member or administrator must file a formal disclosure of conflict. And we did that change because it aligns more directly with the state ethics law. We expanded the conflict of interest standard. We added actual or perceived conflict of interest. We strengthened the outside employment restrictions. We clarified employees cannot take outside work that relies on confidential information from their role. We maintained and clarified the ethics training requirement. We added more language about you have to submit your certification of compliance or completion, sorry. And then we just aligned it all with the current MGLC 268A. We kept the existing protections of no private businesses during school time or on school property was kept.
Deb?
So just a small comment for the last paragraph. School committee members are not employees, so including does not apply. All employees and school committee members?
Oh. All employees, including school committee members. Oh, okay, so and, yeah.
And then if you could give me an example of, in the 4th paragraph, no employee may engage in any activity, financial or otherwise, that creates an actual or perceived conflict of interest. What would it otherwise be?
What paragraph?
The 3rd one? The
third
4th one, that,
Influence, maybe?
that creates an actual or perceived conflict. It's just so general, I don't really know what it means.
Like influence?
No employee may engage in any activity or influence. Financial or, the activity is otherwise. Okay, I understand. I'm good.
Sorry. Thank
That's
you.
okay.
Tim?
2 things. So, school committee members are municipal employees, but not district employees. Is that how that works?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I actually think you're only a municipal employee if you get paid.
Nope.
There's
We're
like
all
some
municipal
other
employees. We're
piece.
special employees.
Oh, that's what it is.
Which means, because we're elected, that means that that has a lot of bearing on the ethics stuff, because we can say a lot more as advocates of issues in ways that paid employees, non-elected officials, are more restrained. So, and the ethics training and the ethics commission does go into some depth about perceived conflict of interest, and they have a standard about a reasonable person, like what a reasonable person might interpret as being a conflict of interest, like that's the subject at hand or the matter at hand. I was gonna say, do we need to spell that out? But I don't think we do. I think, well, I was gonna suggest adding a clause about a reasonable person, because I feel like that's a really important piece of what a perceived conflict of interest means within the Ethics Commission's framework. It's not really necessary that we do this, and I don't want to clutter up our policy, but I don't know. I feel like that would be one more clue to anyone reading this policy that this is about the Ethics Commission's framework.
Where would you put it?
I'm not sure. That's not my problem.
Thanks, Tim.
And
Any other comments?
I think that's it.
So we have the and to add, and then the reasonable person issue on that policy. And then the next first read and the last first read of the night is BE. School committee meetings. And we've had trying to, like, we have our current policy that we have, which is BEA. This BE would take the place of BEA. So we would retire BEA after this was adopted, so we're not doing that today. But this is a new policy, but it would be replacing BEA. And we, as the policy team, looked at our current BEA, and we thought it had some restrictions in it that we don't actually practice. And so then we looked at what MASC has, and this was their policy. We tweaked it a little bit, but we really liked this policy for us. So I open it up to discussion on this policy. And this did not go through legal counsel, just to be clear. This is the only policy that we have presented that has not gone through legal counsel. However, this is just about us, and it's only about us, so we did not feel like we needed to engage counsel on that.
Tim?
I'm worried that I'm going to be the only person who cares what this policy says. But I did write, some suggestions back in February and sent them to
Yes.
William and Sarah Bess. And, looking at it now, my suggestions are a little overwrought. But this policy is not actually just about us. This policy is about public interest. And I think that we could use this policy to regulate how often we meet and how and when, not how, but when we may take decisive action as a committee in a way that I think would be very helpful to the public at large. Because what we have right now, it just kind of feels like the Wild West. We like, sometimes we meet, I think we met 6 times in January. Like, it was an amazing amount of meetings. And I understand that the demand is there. The demand is legitimate. And it's not like making a policy that constrains how often we may have regular meetings and, when we may make significant decisions. That's not going to stem the demand. But I think that the public would be grateful if we could have something a little more predictable, have a schedule of when decisions are made that is a little more regulated, so that we're not creating special meetings and making important decisions in a kind of ad hoc manner. So that's what I wrote up, and I could write up another version of it that is a little cleaner than what I wrote in February. But, you know, the essence of what I suggested is that a regular meeting is when we can take decisive action. And then I kind of define what I think decisive action could mean. Means any vote, adoption of a motion, approval of a consent agenda item, expression of formal consensus or other action that commits the district to a course of action or establishes district policy. It does not include procedural motions like entering executive session, especially. I think there are ways to craft exceptions to our constraints in this policy such that we're not, you know, locking ourselves in. Like, there are going to be times when we have urgent issues that we need to meet at the last minute to discuss. We can build into this policy how to have those last minute urgent meetings in a way that provides information to the public afterwards in a timely manner and sufficient to explain why it was urgent. So that's essentially what I'm concerned about. I don't, you know, love the current policy BEA, but I can see in it that there was an effort to try to regulate meeting cadence and how quickly school committees are making decisions that impact a large number of people.
I was just gonna say that for me, because we are 3 districts, like this meeting for policy where it's 2 districts, it's supposed to be 3, but like this really streamlines. When we have to do the superintendent evaluations, it really streamlines and we need to vote on that. But it's not gonna be on Amherst's schedule, it's not gonna be on Pelham's schedule, and it may or may not be on the region's schedule. So that other policy, to me, we can't practice it because we can't do these joint meetings and make a vote. We'd have to do them 3 meetings. And I really have enjoyed this year, I don't remember doing it other years, having these joint meetings where we're able to really hear everyone's conversations, everyone's voices from all 3 districts, and then we come to a decision, not really together, but together. And for the policies, this is so much more efficient, and we would not be able to do that if we only could do votes on regularly scheduled meetings, because unless we totally redid the calendar and decided we had 1 regional meeting a month and that was it, and then we had 1 joint meeting a month. You know, but I think that would even be hard. Maybe that's something we could look at when we do what's the meeting we have in the summer? A retreat. Like maybe we could decide that at the retreat we have more regular joint meetings or something and make a calendar. I don't know, but that's all I have.
Deb?
So I have a lot of thoughts about this, in particular because of my dual role as an Amherst School Committee member. So I feel like elementary school families don't pay attention necessarily to joint meetings or regional meetings because that's not where their children are. And so it is difficult for me to support agenda items that aren't joint, that don't reflect the work of subcommittees that are joint. So we have a joint superintendent evaluation subcommittee. We have a joint policy subcommittee. And I feel then the SEAC is a joint meeting. And I feel like those are reasonable things to do at joint meetings for the reasons that we have decided to have a conversation that involves 3 districts. But beyond that, I don't feel like it's appropriate for our community to have to pay attention to occasional meetings that impact just their district. So I am in support of a more regulated approach to when meetings can take place and when votes can take place. As Tim is describing, I feel like we can always vote to suspend our policy if we have a reason to, as we can vote to suspend all other policies. So I think that's an appropriate way of dealing with the fact that there's going to be stuff that comes up and we won't be able to meet those requirements or whatever requirements fit within the policy. Way back when, Amherst School Committee met twice a month. And I think that might have been a better structure for Amherst. Our meetings are long, and we can't get to things efficiently. So I don't really know how that fits in, except to say that doing it on an ad hoc basis sometimes makes sense, but when there's a structural need, I think we should address it structurally. And then I would like to know, I would like our policy to spell out what the usual official legal action meeting is, because that's words that I don't. It says regular meetings and special meetings, and regular meeting is the usual official legal action meeting, and a special meeting is an official legal action meeting, and I don't really know the distinction between the two. So that would help me to understand what this policy is suggesting.
Thank you.
So I have myself next on the list. I think the only other question I would have on this would be how forums fall within this. I think, you know, open meeting law dictates a lot of what we can and can't have on, right, so like a regularly scheduled meeting is one that falls within regular open meeting law posted within 48 hours, blah, blah, blah. And then the same open meeting law dictates very few circumstances in which you can call an emergency meeting, you know, something within less than the 48 hours. And the way I'm reading this, it says regular meetings would be, like for the region this year, right, every other every other Tuesday, we have our meetings unless there's school vacation week, right? And then a special meeting would be like tonight, where we're having a added special bonus meeting. So we can, like William mentioned, I have very much appreciated the ability to streamline some of our processes this year. I think it has made for more efficient meetings because we have, at the region, we have a large committee and everybody has an opinion and likes to talk often more than once. So I hear the desire to have some more meat to this, but I don't want to put us in a position where we cannot do the business of the school committee, because school committee meetings are business meetings held in public. They are to do the work that needs to happen for our schools to run efficiently and appropriately. So those are my comments. I have Tim, Bridget, Anna, and I think Dr. Z would like to make a comment on this. So that's what the list looks like.
Yeah, I don't want to like tie us down, right? Like, but I think we have an opportunity here to figure out some timing issues. I don't want this policy or any of my suggestions about this policy to, you know, result in adding to our conflicts, right? And again, I recognize that there is a lot of business to do, and it's not a public meeting. I appreciate that distinction. I think it is still in the public interest, the things that we talk about at these meetings and the things we decide at these meetings. And I'm sometimes concerned that if the public if they can't keep track of what we're going to be talking about or deciding, we'll lose them. You know, there's a trust building, I think, outcome to having a little more predictability. to when school committees meet and come together and decide things. I think that the task in front of us, if enough of us agree that we want some kind of structure and regulation predictability that comes out of policy BE, is a design task. I already did some design and sent that letter, but this may all be wrong, right? There may be much better ideas from other committee members about what is a way to design our meeting constraints in a way that is optimal for all committees, all districts, and all other stakeholders. So, finding a happy medium is what I'm interested in. Finding a medium that helps us do the work we need to do in a way that is communicable and intelligible to the public, and without introducing new conflicts. That's the happy medium I'm hoping to strike.
I can respond to that. I would say, if you have comments or you have suggestions, email them to me, and I will bring them to our policy team.
Bridget?
Well, the reason I put my hand up, I'd been convinced out of, but I mean, I hear partly what Tim is saying, because sometimes I don't even know when the meeting is. Even today, one meeting was canceled, people were texting me, you don't have to go to the meeting, it's canceled. I was like, oh no, that's not the right one, thank you for screenshotting it, because only if you really know and follow are you able to keep track of all that, right? And I think that there's truth that the public wants to know, follow, like there's this discussion today in the parents group, and like, when are the start times? Are you what's going on? What is this about? And the elementary parents are wondering what, and they're not going to find it on our agenda. So I think what Deb is saying is important too. On the other hand, I think today was a great example. The bullying policy, everything went down, right? And then a whole year later, in June, we have a policy, first read, second read in August. We pass it in December. Like, we are not moving so fast that people who want to know can't keep up. We are working, sometimes, by my view, frustratingly slow. And when people come to me to complain, they're not coming to complain that they didn't know something was happening. They're coming to complain and be like, you guys have been working on this for so long. When is it happening? So I want to be careful not to constrain us too much. And I remember feeling incredibly frustrated when everything was going down in this library a few years ago before I was on the committee, at how long it was taking for any sort of responsiveness to happen. So I want to just really not have to then be like 200 people in a room and like, okay, are we going to vote to suspend our policy, and let's talk about that for 30 minutes before we even talk about the real issue, So those are my thoughts.
Anna?
I'm gonna second a lot of what Bridget said, but and what Sarah Beth said. I think that putting too many constraints on what we can do and when we can do it, it just slows us down. I don't think that we arbitrarily schedule additional meetings. I think we schedule additional meetings because we have something urgent that needs to be done and it just can't wait. Or we have too much to do in the next meeting. We don't want to be there for 4 or 5 hours, and so we're going to split it up into 2 meetings so that we can do 3 hours one day and 3 hours the next and not have to do 6 hours in one night. I don't see us as having an arbitrarily scheduled meeting problem. I see us perhaps as having an efficiency problem. I see us perhaps as having maybe, when Tracy came and presented and she was like, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this, that's not your business, that's not doing business, that's just extra stuff. Maybe we need to take a step back and say, maybe we shouldn't do X, Y, and Z during meetings. Maybe we should schedule other things or find other ways of transferring that information. But I don't think that restricting when we can do business is going to help us or the public. And I think we need to, there's regular meetings, which are every other week. And there are special meetings which occur any other time. And then there are emergency meetings, and that's covered in the next policy, and the emergency meetings are scheduled in less than 48 hours. And that's the distinguishing feature of those three definitions of types of meetings. And I think both regular and special meetings are legal action meetings. They're meetings where we can take votes and we can make decisions. It seems strange to even consider the idea of allowing the school committee to meet but not vote. Like, why would you schedule a special meeting so that you can't vote? There's no reason to have a meeting if you can't make a decision. Or unless you have like a really long deliberation process, but that's not usually why we schedule the special meetings. We schedule those special meetings because we need to do business. And that's it.
Dr. Z?
Really rich and great conversation. I want to take a note or a highlight from the school committee's book when it comes to the district and say that many of your policies need to then be operationalized. And it may shift and change based on the school committee members who are sitting in front of you. You are also running 3 districts you're also creating the vision for 3 districts and directing a unified central office to execute supports and actions for 3 districts that are all going through their own level of transition, change, turmoil, and need for stability. So the region on its own has called a lot of special or emergency meetings. Amherst has their length of meeting. And Pelham, which when I first started, stuck to the time frame and I couldn't give them a gold star, has come down to bronze, maybe silver. But I say that to say that what I'm hearing is the need to kind of talk about how is the meeting. And I remember I've sat through a series of chairs, especially at the Amherst committee level, and having the conversation that it is very concerning for me that myself and my team leave here often at like midnight, close to midnight. We are going to work on the lighting outside. You know, it's one of our projects, but it's also not safe. It's also the thought process that for us as a team, we don't have the flexibility of not being at our sites the next morning at 8 a.m. And so the cadence, the pace of school committee meetings often help. One of the key things that I hear in the compromise in terms of the conversation about the joint committee meetings is you may be 3 separate districts, but there are a lot of things that you are so intertwined in that, and you operate very similar, in that way where even to the transportation contract is so intertwined where one district depends on the other. And so there are topics where they're going to fall out of subcommittee topics that need to come in front of the joint committees, because if one district votes yes, and start times is a conversation, if one district votes yes, it affects the other district who voted no. And so it's for the function of the districts, it is best if there's an opportunity for joint school committee meetings where all 3 of you can hear the conversation and all 3 of you can sit down and see, this works for Pelham, this works for region, it doesn't work for Amherst, and have that conversation, which you've done around my goals, which you've done around different things. I think the scheduling and the cadence of them is one thing that we can learn from this year in seeing, and I know that the region had their annual agenda with, like, you could see that on the bottom of the annual agenda, which is posted on board docs, it says points where the joint school committee may need to come together. There are also things that come up because a school district is a system and things happen that you're going to have to meet. There are legal issues, there are procedural issues, and there are things that we just bring it forward. You have a joint policy subcommittee who seems to have about 30, 50, 60 policies that they're trying to pass this year. And so that sends for it. So maybe thinking about quarterly special meetings but keeping the mind frame of the fact that this is the policy that's going to guide school committees moving forward. How you then come together as a committee and decide to operationalize it or design it is something that you need to stick within. But what are the constraints that you want to have in here that allows you to function? And then taking that out and probably making the procedures that you would like to implement. That's my suggestion. And noting that everyone has an opinion, including the superintendent. Every once in a while, the discussions seem to go on a little long.
So that's where I was going. If we could schedule holds at the beginning of the year for, it doesn't have to be quarterly, it can just be predictable, looking at the annual agenda. It wouldn't have to be a policy issue, so that there are no, that would take out the element of surprise. If we do expect there to be a need for regular joint meetings, then we could plan them.
And note that some will not be planned. I think in the,
And know that
some will not be planned. And I also I want to call out that the chairs, I think there was a whole series of conversation earlier this year around just the need for emergency meetings and how quick they were turning around. And because I'm in the agenda planning meetings, I hear those conversations. I think the dates, even this date and the May 20th date, I think Sarah Best did some kind of cross-referencing to see when are the Leverett and Shutesbury meetings, who has this meeting, who has that meeting, so that we could narrow down those dates. The one thing that I feel that is predictable is, for example, SEAC from the end of last year laid out their monthly calendar. Yes, I know you did. She did. And so I was able
It's been
to.
posted
No,
for
it's not on
months.
it's not on my Google calendar. We didn't put it there, but I can go back to that document and know each month what topic they were going to go to, and then kind of go into that frame. FSS has been showing up on my, and I think that's Thursday evening. No, Wednesday. Wednesday evenings at around 7-ish. Joint policy has like a standard. Wait, I can tell you, you say no, but for me, there is a standard in timing, right? It hits around time, and now they've officially rented and sat into the superintendent's conference room. So there are some consistencies in terms of what's happening with different meetings and different subcommittee policies. This only talks about school committee. I think if we sit and really craft out a calendar and talk about, well, FSS would like to be the third Thursday every month. This would like to be this, and start to lay those out at the beginning of the year. Then that will also kind of put in the cadence of what days we would be best set to have possible joint committee meetings or even possible emergency meetings.
Okay. Thank you, everybody. I think that is our last first read.
That is the last first read. And
Alright.
I would also just like to make a comment that on this policy, so if I'm still sitting here, because you never know, we have Pelham elections coming up, so you never know, right? So if I'm still sitting here, if I'm still policy chair, I'm hopeful that policy next year is going to start on school committee governance, section B. So this would fall underneath that. So I would even maybe propose, do we adopt this policy? The current policy we have constrains us in ways that we don't practice. So could we adopt this policy on the second read when we bring this back? Also with the understanding that we're going to go through all of section B next year and really dive deeper into the calendars over the summer and all of that, and see if we couldn't come up with a better policy. And then after we do section B, we're going to also work on section C next year. That's the goal, which is general school administration. Yay. But we're going to do us first before we look at your policies. But anyway.
I think the other thing that we can talk about with that, I know that I've been working, the annual agenda, and as this year has happened, I have updated the annual agenda looking at next year. So when all of these are coming together, it's just kind of an epic spreadsheet to look at all those things, which I also think helps with the point that Anna made, that like, is this a school committee item? Is this really our business to be managing or asking questions about? And how do we make ourselves more efficient? So,
And then the last thing before we finish policies, so we voted all these new policies tonight, thank you. We are going to not implement them until July 1st.
next, first day of the
July
fiscal year.
1st of 2026, this year.
Yes.
So I think it would be nice if we did a quick motion I guess I would motion that all the policies we adopted tonight, we will not implement them until July 1st of 2026.
And you have to direct me to
All
proceed.
policies adopted tonight.
Which should
will
give us
be
time to do everything we need to do on the back end, and also to start proceduralizing them so they can be in effect on July 1.
Okay, so I want to make sure I
Yeah.
have it correctly.
You
that
can change it. I'll take any friendly suggestions you have.
all policies adopted tonight will be implemented July 1, 2026.
Correct.
I will second that. For the region, is there any further discussion at the regional level? All those in favor? Excellent, unanimous. I love it.
I move that all policies adopted tonight be implemented July 1, 2026.
Second.
All in favor? Passes. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, I forgot to do that earlier. So I wanted to make sure we
Perfect.
tied it all together.
Sorry, who seconded for the region?
Me. Okay. We have no consent agenda. So our next joint meeting is scheduled for May 20th. On that agenda, we have superintendent goals for 26, 27. We are like months early, which I'm super excited about. We have a discussion around the strategic plan. I know there were some emails that went out about it. If you have feedback at the regional level, I have a running document with the superintendent that I have already started collecting the feedback I have received. So if you can send that to me, I will add your comments and feedback to that document so it is all in one place for the superintendent. There is the district student bill of rights. We will have a discussion regarding districts' start times. We will have policies for second reads, which were our first reads tonight. So that is professional teacher status, staff ethics and conflicts of interest, and school committee meetings. And then we have many, many policies for first reads. Oh my gosh, it's actually the second page. Okay, so there are first reads.
Not 30.
Drug-free workplace, professional staff positions, professional staff salary schedules, professional staff supplementary pay plans, professional staff recruiting and posting of vacancies, professional staff hiring, support staff positions, background checks, DCJIS model CORI policy, violence in the workplace, part-time and substitute professional staff employment, philosophy of staff development, support staff contracts and compensation plans. And then we have our third and hopefully final joint meeting.
JKAA is also on there.
And JKAA. JKAA. And I will get all of the words that go with that one. And then June 10th will be the presentation of the superintendent's artifacts. And all of those policies that I just listed will be back for second reads and potential votes. And that is our future agenda planning. Anna, and then Deb.
I would like to add something. So, as we have discussed recently, our regional agreement is in desperate need of updating, and I would like to put that on the agenda. Apparently, the regional agreement is forwarded by the school committee, and we forward it, once we've drafted it, we forwarded it to the 4 towns. So it is our responsibility, apparently, to do this work. And so I'd like to start doing that as soon as possible because it's hideously out of date. We are sabotaging our ability to charge rent, and the language referring to the different towns is completely out of date. There's references to MGLs that aren't completely out of date.
So I want you to bring all of that. So that is a region-only conversation.
Okay.
And I have that tentatively scheduled for our May 12th conversation. So all of those things you just said, bring it then. Deb.
Can I add to that, or should that be just a regional conversation about the, whatever it's called?
The regional
That,
agreement.
that one, yes.
Save it.
So
Save it.
save it for that time because
Save
it's
it.
already tentatively scheduled for
Got it.
our region-only May 12th meeting.
I would
Do
love,
you have a joint?
yes.
All right.
So I would like some clarity on what start times means, because it could mean anything. So, is it for FY '27? Is it for, I've just gotten a lot of questions about what is the plan? There's a lot of information, misinformation, I don't even know what's circulating. And so when it gets put on an agenda and I don't have any information besides start times,
So
it's difficult for me as chair to say, I don't know.
So I would say either as chair, you can create, I would recommend creating your own document to share with Dr. Z, which collects all of the questions and information or emails that you've received. Or I have one that I've already started and shared with Dr. Z. If you want to forward that to me, so it's all in a single document, I'm happy to do that.
Yes.
We actually we didn't want to send, I know Laura Jane sent me some stuff about, we didn't want to send too much information out prior to the spring break or during spring break because individuals have already expressed that's not a great time to read information. We had our listening sessions this week. We explained to them. I had a meeting with the leadership, the principals and stuff today. I will be sending out a synopsis explaining to parents and stuff what we'll be covering on May 20th. And we'll be prepared for the May 20th conversation.
Okay, great.
So that's ready to roll? The synopsis?
Bless you.
Bless you.
That was her motion to move to end.
To adjourn?
To adjourn.
Okay.
Once I reread it and make sure and we go through it, it'll be out.
Soonish, thank you.
Andrew, was your hand up? You're just like ready to make the next thing.
No,
You're
no,
like,
no, I don't know what my hand was doing.
Okay. Okay. That is what I have for future agenda. Okay.
I move to adjourn the Amherst School Committee. Oh, no?
Thank you.
What?
Oh, wait, that's you.
Yeah. I got ahead of you. Moved by Deb, seconded by Bridget, all in favor?
Aye.
Amherst is adjourned at 9:26.
I move to adjourn the region.
Second.
Amazing.
All those in favor? We are adjourned at 9:26. Thank you all. We got a lot of great conversation and really good